Well, hello to you all, and welcome to Old Women Who Write. I'm really pleased to have you here. I'm also very pleased to have a return guest. This is my first return guest. Alison Acheson is the author of 11 books. Are we up to date or are we further than that now,
No,
Alison?
it's 11.
Okay, 11 books, including my fave, which is a memoir, Dance Me to the End, 10 Months and 10 Days with ALS, which was proclaimed mesmerizing by the Library Journal. I would agree with them certainly on that. She also has a short story collection, Learning to Live Indoors. I love the name. Alison is the founder of the Unschool for Writers that I want to talk about. I know that's not a new thing for you, but I want to talk about it and what you're doing and why you're doing it. She previously taught in the School of Creative Writing at the University of British Columbia and is lucky enough to live in Vancouver, British Columbia, which I understand is a beautiful, beautiful place to be. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a treat to come back.
Yeah. For those of you who are watching and listening, Alice and I have become sort of pen pal friends based on on her book, which I loved, and our first interview. So for those of you who didn't see the first interview with Allison, I want to sort of catch you up. Dance Me to the End, 10 Days and 10 Months with ALS, came out in, was it 2019? Is that right?
Yes.
I thought so. Um, Dance Me to the End was a departure from everything you've been writing prior to that, yes?
Yes, it
Tell
was.
me as to what your earlier work was.
Well, the collection of short fiction you mentioned was actually my third book.
Okay.
So I did start out writing for adults.
Uh-huh.
And I actually tried hard to write for children, and I wrote these horrible didactic picture books that I would feel like burning. They made the garbage. And then when I had a child, that there was some fundamental shift in me. I have three sons, and when I was pregnant with my first, I had these notions that, nature, nurture, I was going to create the new man all on my own.
Yeah.
And then he was born. He was 3 weeks early, emergency C-section, all that stuff. And I remember my first look into his face and realizing there is a complete human being here. He already knows what he's about, and I'll spend the rest of my life running after him, figuring it out. It
Yeah.
was very humbling.
Yes.
And I think when you write for children, we talk so much about voice appropriation. Don't write the stories that aren't yours. And even though we've all been children, we've all been long tossed out of that garden. And there was something, like I said, very humbling about. I had to bring that to writing for
Gotcha.
kids. It's very humbling. So after that, I started to write picture books, middle grade novels. My first published work was a historical middle grade novel. And I've really enjoyed writing for kids. It's not easy now. It's very political. It's sort of a whole other area. So it's sort of after writing the memoir, it's kind of been a natural thing to go back to writing fiction and long fiction.
I see. And I'm not used to writers who write in a different, it's not a genre, is that right? As you do. I mean, I think people sort of get stuck in one place and write that and write and write and write. And you've really explored new spaces, which is kind of brave.
Well, it's brave and a bit stupid. it
You know,
doesn't
try to say what you mean, would you?
it doesn't create readership.
Uh-huh.
So if you're always focusing for the same audience, you build a readership.
Hear you.
So
Yeah.
I've got published books all over the map, which has served me well as a teacher. And in my Unschool for Writers, I'm able to look at writing for little kids, writing for bigger kids, teens, adults, short fiction, long, nonfiction. I ended up teaching multi-genre writing for young people classes, and I welcomed poetry and animation, songwriting. These are things I'd have to study quickly, but it makes for an interesting. I write what I want to write.
Right. Okay, let's talk for a minute about Dance Me to the End. This was the difficult story of your experience, and your husband and family, to the degree you could know that, with ALS, in the very short time span in which he was diagnosed and transitioned, left this earth. What had you write the book?
When I was in the midst of that, I was trying to find something to read. And I ended up, certainly Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking meant a lot to me and made me determined to keep my own book short, because hers was wonderfully short. I read Joyce Carol Oates' A Widow's Story, which was far too long. But I could not find specifically something about what it is to put together what I saw or came to see as the hope and the acceptance of living with a terminal diagnosis, which is just something other than, it felt other to me, because we stayed at home, and my only experience with a hospital through the whole almost 11 months was going for 24 hours to have a feeding tube put in. And it gave me a little glimpse of what it would be to have something with any degree of hope, where you're going into the hospital, you're having treatment, and there's this little window of, oh, maybe something can happen here. But I had to navigate with that. And I had 3 kids to sustain through that too. So, that idea of the human mind having to hold completely disparate ideas simultaneously, yes, and live that way, which I think we all have to struggle with in some form. So I thought, I've got to write the book, the Toni Morrison thing of, write the book you want to read or need to read.
And am I right? You journaled throughout the process, and the journal or journals were the core, the meat of what you then put together.
They were, although there's not one sentence shared between the two.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes, yeah. So, I could not have written the memoir without the journal, but the journal is so ugly and raw. I don't think anybody would want to read it. It didn't make
space. Is that it? It took you back to the time, the space, the emotion.
I would like to think the memoir does that too. Mm-hmm. The memoir helped me to sort through that. And we have sort of this, right now we're living in a time of just people bearing all. And there's stuff we just don't need to see. We can still, I think, readers need to make it their own piece.
Yes.
And if it's just all my raw garbage, really tough stuff to look at. And I think the memoir is tough enough. At one point, maybe I'm leaping ahead with questions, but at one point, my agent, after she'd read it, she said, you asked me about the poetry in it. Yeah. So the point of death, which to me is not the climax, it's not a novel. We have strange notions of things out there in the world right now. The point of death is a 1-page free verse piece. Yes. And my agent said that readers will want to know more than I gave them about that. Mm. And which is fair enough. I understand where she's coming from. She's thinking, how do I sell this thing? And I'm thinking, how do I write this? And we all have our different jobs in publishing. However, I had one very experienced nonfiction reader, ex-colleague, read it. And he said, I love what you did there. You just put the brakes on and you put up a boundary and you said, yeah, you know what? You're not going there. You don't need to go there, and you're not going there. Gotcha. And my publisher ultimately said nothing about how I portrayed that day.
Right.
So I think there are still points where we can just stop.
I agree. I
It
recently,
wasn't.
yeah, as you know, I'm working on a memoir for 2 years now, and I can't remember if, and you graciously read it for me, and there was I don't know if you had, I had the piece in there that concerned my having an abortion. I don't know if that piece was in there when you read it.
Oh, it wasn't. Gene, I have to say you're really fuzzy.
Oh, I am?
You're really fuzzy, or is that me?
No, it could be me. I have no idea.
Right now, you're okay. It's just when you're sitting back.
Okay, I'll stay up here.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. So what I noticed was that when I went to write about it, I wanted it in there for a couple of reasons. One, it was topical, obviously,
Yes.
but that I had to write it in free verse. You know,
Ah, okay.
the
Right.
same sort of thinking.
Yes.
You know, it was in a way too close to the bone
No,
and the details didn't matter. You know, it was
no,
the,
they don't. They don't. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So
That's good. That's good. I think it's good to have included that.
yeah.
And in that way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a minute about your use of verse there, because it was shocking to me when I read your book. It was the first time I realized that you could do that. You
Right.
know, that there were the rules, were bendable. They were expandable. You could change what
Yes.
was being done. And I honestly didn't know that before. I mean, I'm sure you're not the first person to do it, but you're the first person in a book that I read that I said, oh my, I see why she did this. You know, I see how effective it is. I see what a nice, not stopper, but something that I don't even know how to describe it. Puts a nice piece in between solidity, comes this flow. That's
Right.
kind of what I'm trying to say.
My
And
my ex-colleague called them interludes.
uh-huh, yeah,
That's a good word.
yeah, it is a good word.
Yeah.
It's a good word. I like it a lot. Um, how long did it take you to write Dance Me to the End?
It really it wasn't long. When I think the novel I've just finished has taken 3 years, and I know it has more work to do.
Wow.
Um, Marty passed away in the spring of 2016. I muddled along, keeping a journal through the early days of grieving. Somewhere in the back of my mind, in the weeks even after that, I kept thinking I need to do something with this, so that someone else in this situation, there's a book for them to read. So I think I started to write it, even towards the end of 2016.
Mhm.
And then in December of that year, my dad was diagnosed with ALS, which was just a bizarre trip to think, oh my goodness, now I'm going to watch my parents.
Right.
And not only am I watching them go through it, but they have just witnessed their daughter going through it. I thought this is just absolutely strange. So again, that even though my mother, it was a long time before she read it, but again, it just sort of galvanized me to, do something. So I was writing it through 2017, 2018. By the fall of 2018, it was done.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's relatively
Fast.
quick.
Yeah.
And then my agent sent it out, and it was accepted by Touchwood Editions in January.
Let's just stay there for a minute, because first of all, how'd you get an agent?
Oh, she's actually my fourth agent. I had two who retired.
Uh-huh.
I had one who was just wonderful, aging Chicago bookseller. Loved her, but she retired in her mid-70s. It was exhausting. And then I found somebody, it's not easy. The research that I put into it, 46 hours of research per agent.
Yes. Yes.
Looking up everything. So I went to querytracker.com, which is an agent site. And I didn't just look up genres. I went to each person who, for one thing, I was looking for somebody who can sell everything, because I didn't want
Oh.
a children's agent and an adult material agent. I thought I need somebody who can do all of this. I don't want two. It's bad enough, or I shouldn't say bad enough. That's terrible. It's hard enough having one. It's really like a marriage. I tell people, do not rush into this. I know people are so thrilled to have an agent,
Yeah.
but you are stuck with them until that book is out of print, and even beyond then. It's honestly, it's analogous to having children with somebody. Even if you divorce, you're stuck.
Yep.
That's your ex. So you better like them, and they better be passionate about your work. It's got to go beyond business.
Yes.
So that really narrows it down right there. And then you take, whatever your needs are, and then 4 to 6 hours reading through their blogs, reading through what kinds of things have they sold in the past, how do they come across on Twitter and all that horrible stuff. So you've got to do it, because if you end up getting an acceptance letter from somebody you haven't done your due diligence, and you're stuck with somebody that it's not a good match, you're stuck.
Wow.
And you can't be shopping for another agent when you still are under contract with one.
I see.
So there's rules about affairs with agents.
Yeah, there are. But you're inspiring me. I thought I had done a lot of research. I have not done the depth of research that you did on the particular agents. And I've also been sort of narrowing it down to those who really love memoir.
Right.
Right. It seems like you either do or don't love memoir. I mean, there's
kind of a glut of memoir out there right now. So you're right. You want to find somebody who's got a real soft spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Were you happy with the finished and published book?
I really am. I was thrilled with the cover. You have very little say with the cover.
Very nice.
They sent me 4 or 5 different covers, but I know ultimately and contractually that while they appreciate the writer's input, they're going to go with what the marketing people say. Always. Love the marketing people. Yeah. So I lucked out with the cover. I think it's a perfect cover. They had the same cover in 2 different color sets. And again, they went with the one that that pulled me in. So I felt good about that.
Yep.
The editing process was really positive. I ended up actually working with the publisher who edited it, which is a bit unusual, but she was very attached to the book. So again, I think when you have people who are it's going beyond the business thing to people being passionate about the work. Gotcha. That makes a big difference.
Gotcha. I didn't ask this before, but would you ever consider, I mean, you made one comment one time when we were emailing each other about that you were as nervous as I was about the first time finding an agent. You said you're just as nervous with this next book that you're writing. Why?
I think, unless you're writing the same thing over and over again, which I can't imagine, there's a whole new set of things that feel very raw and new. I feel like in the novel that I've just finished and just sent to my agent on Thursday, I'm looking at, whereas I think my memoir looks at what I would call clean pain, just loss, big loss. My novel goes into what I would call very messy, complicated pain, where the loss is not as straightforward as someone dying and you've lost your best friend and your partner, but it's fairly clean. It's fairly clean, I think. And I'm looking at gender roles, and I don't mean gender identity. I mean, old-fashioned roles of, who does childcare, who brings home the bacon, those old things, but in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm probably going to get some kickback for certain things that I've brought up. I like to think that because it's fiction, it should be safe from
I don't think
people
so.
freaking out about things, but no, there's a lot of freaking out these days. So,
So,
so that makes me very nervous.
but your
And I
agent
think,
is the same
sorry,
agent, right? You have the same agent as you
yeah,
had.
yes, I have the same agent.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's a
yeah.
good thing. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very, I couldn't be happier really with my, the fact that she can work in so many areas, and she works within a very large agency.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives me some confidence too, because if she's working in a very new area for her, or one she's just not so familiar with, there are other agents, there's interaction, and there's so
Yeah.
there's all that behind her too, which
Got
is I benefit from that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Something happened. I'm happy that you finished for now the
Yes,
draft.
yes,
Finished the manuscript, I always say.
yes,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, but something else exciting happened, and I'm interested in how it happened, which is that your book has become an audiobook.
Yes.
I was looking at it on Amazon the other day, and there it is. It's an audiobook. How does that happen?
Well, that's been interesting, and I think there's. You did say I'm in Vancouver, so I am Canadian, and our publishing industry is very different from the American industry. In fact, in that it's a heavily subsidized industry.
Oh.
So it happened that my publisher, who is a small publisher, not one of the big five who seem to be shrinking to two or three,
Mhm.
but someone, they're a small, they're that's a whole other thing. There's sort of these tiers of publishers.
Yes.
They put together an application for funding to create an audiobook, and they were awarded their request for funding.
I see.
So this happened the early part of the year. So I'm thinking, almost 2.5 years after the hardcover, the real copy of the book came out.
Mhm.
And they just let me know, we've got funding, expect to get some audio tapes, audition tapes to listen to. And again, I don't think I had the final say, but they certainly wanted to know whose voice I found the optimal for the project.
Yeah.
And they sent me 4, and I listened to the first 3, and my heart was in behind my kneecap somewhere.
Oh, no.
I think because of the content of the book, loss and just heavy stuff. The 3 readers I listened to were very serious. Everything was heavy and slow. And I just thought, oh my goodness, if this is it, I'd better read it myself, even though I don't have experience with that. And I didn't really want to do that. And then I listened to the 4th, and she had this just wonderful, deeper, well-modulated voice. But the thing I most loved was her pacing. And her pacing, picked it up when it needed to be picked up.
Yes.
And carried it. And I thought, yeah, you need to carry the reader, the listener.
Yeah.
So I was just delighted when I heard the 4th tape. I listened to probably 30 seconds of it and just went, wow. I mean, if you want, sorry?
I hope that's the one they chose.
That's the one they chose. And she's a very, very, she is an actress. She's won awards for her film work, but she's also a very experienced voice artist. And this was actually her first Canadian book. She's done a lot of voice work for American books, even though she is Canadian. And I was just thrilled. I talked to her on the phone, and we just, immediate connection. And she was so fussy with the work. She had this list of words. She wanted to know how to pronounce them. my son's names, flamenco terminology, and anything she was questioning, she ascertained and took
Wow.
notes and everything. And again, it's not just reading the prose, it was reading, how do you read poetry? And that horrible, I'm reading poetry
Yeah.
now voice, or as
Right.
it should be read.
Right.
And I was very happy.
Oh yeah, I would think so. So that is out and about and out there for
It
people.
is, and you can only stream it. It's been very interesting because
Oh,
I do a lot of my own promotional work, especially, the first 6 months when a book is published, the publisher really puts a lot of fire behind it and hires extra people. And then after that, it's mostly up to you.
yeah.
So, and I've discovered, again, with the audiobook, that's still the up to you phase. So, I was rather hoping for CDs to send out to people, and I
Oh,
can't.
nobody does CDs anymore.
No, I know. I know. Move on, right?
Right. Get with the program.
Yeah, don't show your age. My age. Quite right.
Well, tell us. Oh, what time is it? Fine. Oh, we have like about 10 minutes. Tell me about your writing practice. I mean, what is your writing practice?
Well, I've left my full-time job in the past year. I was teaching, and that kept me very busy, although I always still managed to write, certainly in summers. I wrote all the time, but I'd be able to write a lot more in the summers.
Yeah.
And I was always very vigilant of my summers, which I think you have to be if you're a teacher. But now I am free of that. I have the Unschool for Writers, so I consistently produce posts for that. But I'm at this wonderful point in my life when I can spend hours and hours every week writing.
Wow.
So, and I do, just 2 weeks ago, for instance, to get to the end of this novel, I just let everybody know I'm not spending time with anybody. And I find I need to do that once in a while, and just sort of have a hideout.
Homemade retreat.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So
retirement was not a shock to your system. You're sounding like you just moved right into it.
Yeah. I probably worked longer hours than I did when I was teaching. I worked 7 days a week. So between writing for my Unschool, and I'm always working on more than one project. So I'll be finishing one project. For instance, right now I'm going back to a middle grade novel that I started last fall when I needed a break from my adult novel. And it's researched, it's set in 1526. So I have a lot of research to do.
Yeah.
And so there was about a 6-week period where I just did reading and research and writing. And I came up with about 50 good pages. And I thought, okay, now I need to get back to my adult novel. So sometimes the brain just needs, like, the only way I can look at a novel length project with a clear head is to take a break by doing something else.
That makes sense.
So now it's nice because I go back to a project and there's 50 pages waiting, and I need to re-immerse myself in the reading and the research, but it's there waiting for me, so that's nice.
Right. This is like off topic, but there are about 100 and something women in my Facebook page group, Old Women Who Write, and all levels of experience. But what I've discovered is that there are a couple in there who are wonderful writers, and they're all self-publishing or hybrid publishing because they can't get an agent, can't get a traditional publisher.
Right.
And it's just occurred to me that I'm going to start a list to do something with of the ones that are out there that I think are fabulous.
Right. Yes.
That for people to say, look over there, look there for a minute.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that word of mouth about how good a piece is so significant, and it's really hard to, unless you're publishing with one of the big five. And I know people say, oh, well, even then, but the big five still, the problem is that the world pays more attention to the stuff that's produced by the big five.
Yeah.
And it's, unless individuals are pointing out saying, this is amazing, read this.
Yeah.
It's just an uphill
Yep.
climb. And we also live in a weird time of, you vote for your friends, whatever. Well, that's great if it's good work.
Yeah.
But if it's not good
Right.
work, it's just steering people the wrong way.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, no, do that. I'll pass along the list too.
Yeah. So I took us on a side trip.
No, it's a good project.
Tell me about this Unschool for Writers. What is it? Because I think a lot of people would be interested in old women who write.
Okay. No, it's been fun. There are pieces of teaching I did not want to give up, because I actually, as much as I love writing, there was a time when I really, really was passionate about teaching.
Mm-hmm.
The academic world, I won't go on and on about it, but it's really shifted. It's not a fun place to be. And I honestly don't think it's a good place to learn to be an artist.
Got it.
Which is, people are going out and paying thousands of dollars for an MFA.
Mm-hmm.
My program was about to accept unfinished thesis work to complete your degree, which just seems bizarre to me. Like, why would anyone take part in a program where they don't have to finish something? That's not being let off the hook. That's just being dropped, and you shouldn't have to pay for that. So I thought, what are the things I like about teaching? I like sharing what I know. I like hearing what other people know. I do like looking at writing. So we actually have a workshop component. I've got a really, at the moment, a thriving group of picture book writers. And they're posting, and people are leaping in and commenting. It'd be good to do some memoir and some poetry and maybe flash fiction. That'll come. But the sense of community and the sense of sharing are things that I really wanted to hold on to. And my youngest son actually homeschooled after grade 4 right through to graduation. And I was immersed in the unschooling and the homeschooling community. And I thought to bring that to a level for adults would be really fun. So that's the idea behind the Unschool for Writers. People can jump on for free and read and see what they think. And then there's a small monthly or annual. It's under Substack, and Substack is a really wonderful platform with no advertising.
Wow.
It makes me think of Ms. Magazine back in the 80s when they dropped advertising. They kind of upped their subscription rate a little bit, but I remember getting those big, fat, amazing magazines of just, and I'd like to think it has that kind of that feeling of, okay, we're not dealing with ads. We can just get to the writing.
So the format is written in, like, the basic is newsletter format, right?
Yeah.
So give people how are they going to get there?
Well, should I share the URL with you to post with this? Okay, because if you look up Unschool for Writers Substack, it'll come up.
Okay.
But I will give you the actual URL. But
okay, yeah, that would really be great. I think people would like that. Well, guess what? The last question was, why do you write? But I have the feeling that's a 40-minute answer.
Because I have to. That's the short answer.
You have to.
And I think that's the reason anybody writes, really. If you're not writing because you have to, well, why would you? Because it's kind of torture.
I'm with you. And I agree with you on that. Yay. Okay, I think we're done.
All right.
I have to always remember how to get out of here once I'm out. So I want to thank people who are watching for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed Alison. You can buy her book, whether it's in hard copy, Kindle, or audiobook on Amazon. Dance Me to the End. Just put that in and you'll find it. And it will be worth your reading. So please do it. So thank you, Alison.
Thank you, G. It's been a pleasure.